Hi there, this is Neil Salvage, and welcome to this podcast, Gassing On. Yes, we're going to gas on about the world of ground gas. We're going to meet people in the industry. We're going to visit places and generally find out about interesting things that are happening, developing, and the changes that have gone on before us. So welcome on board and hope you enjoy this podcast. So hello everybody and welcome back to Gassing On. Neil Salvage here, and today I've got a special guest with me, Steve Wilson. Hello Steve.
Hello Neil, it's good to see you.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks, and thank you for inviting me to Gassing On.
Well, it's great to have you to come on, and may I first say congratulations on your 20 years at EPG. It popped up on LinkedIn the other day. Did you realise?
Yeah, I did realise. Thank you very much.
Has that time flown?
It has actually, and I've actually been cleaning my office out over the past few days and sort of picking things up from 20 years ago, and you realise how many projects you've been involved with over that 20 years.
Well, Steve, where did it all begin for you? Did you set off on a road of ground contamination and all these nasties that we deal with, or did it start elsewhere for you?
It started out with a trip to Nepal in 1991, sorry. And my wife and myself had just got married, and we packed work in and went out trekking and rafting in Nepal. And then when I came back, I was desperate to get a job, and the first job that came up was at a company called Frank Graham's in Reading. And at Frank Graham's I met my mentor and very good friend, Dr. Jeff Card.
Oh yeah, we know Jeff. Yeah.
And that is where it all began, because at the time I joined Frank Graham's, Jeff was writing Syria 149, and so I got involved helping him write that as a graduate senior engineer at the time. So yeah.
Okay, so well, it's going back quite a while, and before we started we had a little chat about the guidance and regulations that are written. I'd like to dip into some of those, Steve, because I know you've been a prominent character in writing those and assisting with them. Going back to the 735 Syria 735 verification document, how do you think that's bearing its weight in the industry at the moment? Is it working well?
I think it's had a massive impact in the quality of gas membrane installations, without a doubt. One of the drivers for writing C735 was that over the preceding years prior to that publication, we'd seen the quality of gas membrane installations drop quite significantly. So I think it has, certainly. You've now got the verification consultants, you've got the MVQ level 4, the CLARE accreditation, so it is improving it. There's still way to go in some cases, but I think we're in a much better place than we were before that was published.
Yeah. So it was 2014 when that document landed, wasn't it, when it was drafted? So it's going back. We're going back seven or so years now. Time for a little refresh, possibly, on that. If the money was in the bank to do it, would you say it could be some? There could be some tweaks and turns appropriate.
It's like every document. There probably are, but I mean the basics of it, I think, are still solid. And to be honest, to my mind now, I think the actual installations by and large are good quality. The verification after it's been installed is good quality. The real problems that I'm seeing now are post-verification and damage caused by contracts, and in particular with timber framed housing.
Oh, yeah.
I see a lot of sort of saw cuts and drill holes through membranes,
spiking the sole plates. So
I think if anything it probably needs something about sort of post construction,
right,
or move the verification process to a later point possibly, or part of it.
Well, there was the other, a more recent document, and this is hot off the press really, the Syria 801 guidance. Have I got the right number there, the 801? That one's aimed at the site managers predominantly and managing this. You've been very involved in that, Steve. How's it looking? How's that going to help the industry?
Well, I won't take credit. I've sort of my colleague Sarah Mortimer has done the vast majority of work on that.
Right.
I'll just poke my nose in every so often.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Sarah's done a brilliant job on that. And it is aimed at site managers to try and address this problem of damage after membranes are installed. So hopefully that will help. And it's written in a very hopefully it's written in a very simple way that site managers will be able to understand it easily.
Good.
And get the message across to them that they've got to look after these membranes once they're installed.
Well, it's certainly an issue I encounter. I'm meeting trades at different points of the build, and you see the various pitfalls, and I do spend a lot of time myself talking to site managers, so it's a useful tool to have to signpost them and say, have a read of this, So but that's out and about. I think it was just published about 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? It's
I think it's brand new.
Hot news. Some other guidance that I believe is bubbling away at the moment. I don't think this one's actually been issued. Are NHBC doing some work at the moment that you're party to, Steve, that you can talk about?
Yeah, so Bureau Happold and EPG are doing some work for the NHBC at the moment on ground gas. So it's for the NHBC Foundation.
Oh, right.
But it's not intended to be the be-all and end-all of ground gas. So the principles behind the approach that we're taking is to identify the 5 most common problems or issues in a series of categories that cause the most sort of issues in terms of risk assessment, site investigation, design of gas protection measures, installation of gas protection measures, and then verification afterwards.
Right.
So it's not intended to go through all the theory or new theory or anything.
We
like
should know
that.
It should be there, shouldn't it?
and one of the other main aims of it is there are vast volumes of guidance on ground gas, on investigating ground gas, on doing risk assessments, less so probably on design of gas protection measures, but there is still a lot of information out there. And so again, what we're going to do is we are going to provide a roadmap through that guidance to say, so for example at site investigation stage, point out the really important parts of each document, the clauses almost and paragraphs.
Brilliant.
That you should be looking at. So it should give people a roadmap and a tool to help them navigate through all that information that is out there.
Excellent. Oh, any idea when this is likely to come into publication? Well, it's still work in progress.
It's definitely still a work in progress, and we did put a survey. My colleague Amy Juden put a survey out, which if anybody wants to complete the survey, particularly any housing developers or site managers who are listening to this, we want their feedback, because we've got lots of consultants and regulators' feedback, but it would be good to get housing developers and site managers their view on it.
Definitely. Well, we'll pop up a link at the end of this for that, so people can join in on that, Steve. That's really valuable. So this guidance, we're pretty. Do you think we're pretty good in the UK at writing these guidance documents and getting them out there? We're at the forefront. I
think we are. There is a lot of information from other countries, but not to the extent that we have it in the UK. And that started with the first Syria reports. The Syria reports from 1995 were the foundation for everything that's gone after that. And I've still got all those 1995 Syria reports on my bookshelf, and I read them on a regular basis. I'm still using the technical information that is in there.
Excellent. Well, it's valuable stuff, isn't it? That could be reused. I'm sure similar scenarios still crop up from time to time, then dipping back into them, really valuable. The other thing I was going to ask you about, Steve, is internationally, how do our standards stack up, against, I know yourself and myself, we both go to Australia, you're more international. Do people look at our standards quite, is it quite prominent in Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah. In Australia, the New South Wales have got their own guidance on ground gas and landfill gas, and that New South Wales guidance is based around BS 8485, and it was updated when we updated BS 8485 in 2019.
Right.
I think there's been a subsequent update to that New South Wales guidance.
Oh, right.
So in Australia they do tend to follow what we do in the UK. In America they've got their own guidance. It's fundamentally based on work that was done in California.
Right.
I always like referencing the California guidance because the reference is Schwarzenegger.
Oh, right.
Because he was the governor at the time it was
and
published.
he stamped them,
and
did he?
Stamped it,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, excellent.
But there is a lot of useful information in that American California guidance. But the problem is that in terms of risk assessment and design of gas protection, it is very, very prescriptive.
Right.
And for example, they still rely on pipes in gravel for underfloor venting.
Wow.
And still seem to believe that that's going to work under big warehouse
Right.
systems,
Yeah.
passively. So it is. Again, there's lots of useful information there, but you've got to use it carefully.
Yeah.
And then in Canada. Canada's also got quite a lot of guidance, but it's based on it's for landfill gas,
Right.
purely landfill gas focused,
Okay.
and not sort of the wider ground gas issues that we look at in this country.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, I always try and keep our podcast night short, otherwise our audience would disappear off. What I was going to say, Steve, where's the future of ground gas and contaminated land? What can you see happening 10, 20? We've just had all the COP issue going on in Glasgow, a lot of environmental impacts going on around the world, here in the UK. How's it going to pan out for us in our sector?
That's a good question, and one that I haven't got the answer to, but what I do think is that at EPG we do a lot of work in vapour intrusion, which is sort of hydrocarbon contamination, and at the moment there's a definite split between how we look at and how we risk assess vapour intrusion and how we risk assess ground gas, but fundamentally they both behave the same. So we've been doing quite a lot of work, and we've been doing workshops out in Australia looking at how we can bring the two approaches together.
Okay.
where we can,
Yeah.
so that we've got a common approach both in the design of the protection measures and in the way we risk assess it. So I think that's one of the things that will change in the next few years. And I think also we've got to look at climate change in terms of the impact on gas risk, but we've got to do it in a sensible way. You can't just say climate change is going to make it worse, because in a lot of cases it won't make it worse. So you've got to do that. And also I think we have got to look at how putting products into buildings when we don't need to.
Right. Yes.
So we've got to look at the climate, the carbon impact on what we're designing. I think that is really, really important as well. So those are probably the three things off the top of my head.
It's interesting, and that's really valuable. Any words of advice, Steve, to any of the future generation coming up? We're all getting a little bit older now, aren't we? I meet a lot of young consultants, a lot of graduate engineers who are coming new into the sector. We do a lot of training, trying to share the education out there. Any words of advice to the next generation that are coming through?
Yeah. I would say ground gas is interesting. I'm a geek. I'm a ground gas geek. But also, really sort of get to grips with those guidance documents, particularly those old Syria documents that explain the sort of the basics, the chemistry, the physics of ground gas, how it's generated and migrated, and don't get beyond just thinking that risk assessment is multiplying a concentration by a flow rate. And that design of gas protection is just adding up a few points, because it's not. There is a lot more involved in it than appears on the surface from reading BS 8485.
Good advice. Thank you. Brilliant, Steve. Well, if anybody wants to get hold of you after the podcast, we're obviously going to post up your survey for the NHBC guidance. But if anybody wants to contact you, where's the best path to find you?
If you go to EPG's website, so it's epg-ltd.co.uk, and the contact details are on there.
Brilliant. Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure to have a chat, and thanks for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks, Steve. So, as mentioned by Steve during our Gassing On interview, here's the link for the survey that the NHBC and Borough Happold and EPG are conducting. Please engage with this survey. It's key that we get information from the key stakeholders and people related to this in industry. So thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye now.